So we are now sitting at the 16th of November in 2023, and I haven't seen my children in any meaningful way. That is, my youngest two children, my 11-year-old girl who could have died in a house fire last year when she sent me a photo of her burnt legs, falling asleep at her father's, Ian Little's house next to a radiator with burnt marks, which you can see further down on my page here. And when my son, who told DCJ for 3 years that he did not wish to live with anyone except me, his loving and educational mother, was ignored for 3 years straight, including in lockdown hell, where I got stuck interstate in a border closure. And so those children have now been what's called parentally alienated from me. And I'm going to read you part of the shitfuckery that pertains to the family law court in Australia today. So last Tuesday, the 7th of November, literally on Melbourne Cup Day, while horses were being flogged to death, I went down and had a little punt so this is the second year in a row that I have tried to comply with the shitfuckery of the family law court paperwork. And this is what I got back today. I don't know if you can see that. That's the little, emu, kangaroo and the emu, and that's the Federal Circuit and Family Law Court of Australia. And that's the inquiries line, and it's the 16th of November over here, and there's my address. And there's the regarding SYC 595-2014 Little, Ian Malcolm Calder, and Farrow-Pryke D. And this is what they've called the rejection of my contravention application, and I will read it to you. I advise that the contravention application and supporting affidavit provided to the court registry over the counter on the 8th of November. So I was wrong. I'm pretty sure it was the 7th, but they've said the 8th, have not been accepted for filing. This is the third time this is paperwork. You'd think it was some fucking Franz Kafka kind of nightmare, and it is. The application. The contravention application is defective and may be dismissed on the return date if filed. Well, I filed it, and a nice little man called Nate went through every single section with me to make sure that it wasn't rejected. Part A of the application has not been completed. Well, it has. Every single part of it was filled out. Part D of the application has not been properly completed. You have included evidence about the alleged contraventions as specified in the application, for example, at item 7. Do not set out the evidence upon which you rely to prove the alleged contravention in the application. All evidence must be set out in the supporting affidavit. Well, the affidavit was 110 pages long, and there was a lot of annexures and exhibits, so it was very supporting, and there was an affidavit. So I had already done that. The number of the orders, including subsection, alleged to have been contravened are not identified. Well, you see, when you get family parenting orders, which I do have, they have numbers on them. It's this area here, and then there's this subsection here, and it's numbered. But if an adult has denied their child from the other parent for like 3 whole years, you don't have enough room to write down all the dates and all the specific times that they were meant to drop them to you, or you were meant to drop them back to them or collect them from the other parent. So I have literally just said all orders have been contravened comprehensively and extensively from this date to here. Okay? And they've just gone, no, you didn't actually write every date down. And I'm like, well, there's hardly enough room, and that would be a stupid waste of time. I've given you the parameters. So they've rejected me on the grounds of already highly specified parameters. Then it says there are no specified dates provided for any contravention alleged as required. And I said, no, it's all of the dates between these two brackets here because he never gave them over. These are my children, my 11-year-old, previously 8-year-old, since tucked into bed children. And then it says if there are more than 2 contraventions alleged, boo. If there are more than 2 contraventions alleged, like there's 3 fucking years alleged here, please copy page 4 of the application form entitled Part D. Details of the alleged contraventions continued for each additional contravention that you allege. Well, like I said, you can't write down every second week and half of all school holidays for 3 whole fucking years. There's not enough dates on enough paper. You need to just say, there's the brackets, it's never been upheld. For each alleged contravention, the following details must be provided in the contravention application form. 1. Specific order number breached, including any sub-order or paragraph. 2. Specific date of the breach, not a date, range or general month. Well, that's what I did because I said there was just such a huge volume of time that you couldn't list every single one. So this guy, Nate, has obviously sat there in the Sydney FLC, the Family Law Court, the Federal Circuit Court, the Lionel Bowen building on Liverpool Street in Sydney last week and just watched me do this entire thing after this is like my 2.5 year. Time and location of the breach, if applicable. Well, it's given you an if applicable clause, get out of jail free clause there, but it hasn't given it to you in any other part. 4. Brief description of the respondent's actions amounting to the breach was like didn't turn up, failed to hand over child, wouldn't respond to email. Like every single one of those things pertain to the entire 3 years. So you should just, by all normal logic, in any normal person's mind, you would just go from the year 2020 to 2023, this has never been complied with. But they're rejecting me because after 2.5 years of trying this for the 3rd time, I've gone in person last week with this 150-point affidavit extensively proved by annexures, which are printed forms, or exhibits, which are things like photographs. And so it's Exhibit A or Annexure 1B, and I've done all of that. But I didn't do my little bits where I sat there and filled out every single date in 3 years because that would be completely fucking boneheadedly stupid, wouldn't it? No, not the Australian system. This is heading up to Christmas again. Part E of the application has not been properly completed, noting that you have not deposed that 1, you have read the application, or bullfucking shit, it was stamped with a goddamn JP's badge on every single page, saying that I'd read it. 2, the facts of which you have personal knowledge are true. So they're saying I haven't signed a fucking bog standard affidavit when I have. It says, so what they're saying is I've missed the words, I testify that to the best of my knowledge, this is true and correct and everything. So they're saying here, Part E of the application has not been properly completed, knowing that you have not deposed that you have read the application. 1, 2, the facts of which you have personal knowledge are true. 3, you understand the court may not accept this application if you have not complied with the rules of court. And 4, all other facts are true to the best of your knowledge, information and belief. Well, no, that's why I'm there for the 3rd time doing this, for my children's lives just completely taken away. G'day, Miles. G'day, Michael. You two would like each other, probably. So they've now rejected, in this 3rd year of my children's complete wipeout from my life. This is a federal government-regulated family daycare service provider you're looking at for 4 years, 50 hours a week alone to get away from an abusive man, pregnant. This is a university-educated BA in communications at UTS, majoring in media production and writing. This is a working with children checked IAP2 certified stakeholder engagement. I've worked as a professional nanny for barristers, wrote the first climate change program, toured it around high schools back in 1995, making me a bit of a dinosaur, and then etymology programs, insects and bugs for primary school students. And you couldn't get more qualified. I worked with, you could be a school teacher, which I was going to retrain as because that's what they said they wanted. But then they were also too busy trying to cancel my working with children check when I turned up to see my children whose own human rights had not been enforced for the last 3 years, given to a man who assaulted me and 3 other women before me. And this is Australia in 2023. The affidavit. I advise the affidavit submitted with, so second part, the affidavit, underline, I advise the affidavit submitted with the contravention application is rejected for filing for the following reasons. 2, only 2. Your evidence must be contained within the body of the affidavit format Part D rather than the substantive portion of your affidavit simply being attached. No, Part D was just 1 page. Mine was 150 fucking pages. So I got every single one of them JP witnessed and stamped, and these are about my children, and they're fucking arguing with me about the right little ticky box on the paperwork. Further, the content of your affidavit has not been properly sworn. Well, bullshit. It was properly sworn by Nate at the Sydney Family Law Court Centre and by the guy at Office Works who stamped every single page and signed it. Next steps. Given the seriousness of the consequences which may follow a finding of a breach of an order, that's what I'm alleging that father has done because he has for 3 whole fucking years, not given me my children. So it's so long I can't write every single date and time. And then they've gone, because you didn't write every single date and time, we're just going to reject you. And I've gone, no, it's the brackets of this to here because he's never once complied. But so they've rejected me for him never once complying, even though I didn't have enough space in their pathetic little 1-page box to sit there and write every single date and every single time that he fucked me and my children over. Ian Malcolm Calder Little, date of birth 22nd of September 1960, works at the Public Service Association, where his brother Stuart with an EWART Little is on over 430 grand a year as the CEO, and Stuart Little's wife Julie Westacott is employed on handsome money too, just like Ian and half their Riverwood dog friends, as they call themselves. Given the seriousness of the consequences which may follow a finding of a breach of an order, contravention applications are very technical and are dealt with in a quasi-criminal manner. No shit. I went to the fucking court to make sure that it was lodged correctly, but you couldn't even get that right down at the Sydney FLC. That is Nate. It is noted the application cannot be amended. What, start again? For these reasons, it is necessary all technical requirements are met before the filing of a contravention application. A defective application, if filed, may result in the court dismissing same at the first return date. In the event the court dismisses the application, the court must consider considering costs against the applicant. Yeah, really? Well, this has gone straight down to fucking Mark Dreyfus because unbelievably, sadly, his wife died recently and he apparently was a nice guy and loved her, so... Sorry, Mark. But they also had closing last Friday, which I put a submission into. The second part of the Family Law Court Act, the first part was overturning the presumption of shared care so that women didn't have to share their children with men who'd assaulted them. The second part is what they did not do, which I put in a submission saying last Friday, saying, why have you not criminalised children being stolen from other parents? Because I know 7 men and 3 women who haven't seen their children in years. It broke them to suicidality. There could be nothing more important. If you're so unconvinced of that, get on the fucking SBS News at night and watch Hamas stealing Israelis and 1,500 Israelis are stolen and murdered, and so 15,000 children in the Gaza Strip are murdered in response, and then Ukraine is invaded by Russia and their children are stolen from them, and everyone's weeping and crying in the documentaries when the children are returned. But no, in Australia, right next to you, there's somebody like me who has absolute evidence coming out of every orifice that they were absolutely immaculate, loving, caring, diligent, beautiful parents on every metric, and nothing is being done to enforce their children's human rights to a meaningful relationship with their parents, and my human rights to a meaningful relationship with my children. And so legislative change is required. But meanwhile, your children are growing so far up that they don't even remember living with you anymore. To avoid child support payments, because this person's on 130 grand a year and I'm not. Anyway, I'm going to publish this. I'm deliberately breaking the law about all of the non-publication laws. I even spoke to Marion Leach from Four Corners. I had a good hour long. She was very kind to me. She's been with them for 30 years. And she said, oh, look, we tried to get something similar up when Jess Hill did her piece that SBS ended up turning into a series called See What You Made Me Do, when her book was called Look What You Made Me Do, because Jess Hill from Avalon in New South Wales sat there and read 40 family law court transcripts and saw how women who had been so rattled and emotionally and financially and so psychosocially and everything fucked up and disturbed by men assaulting them ended up like looking a bit like this and coming off all the worse for it in the family law court system, and then having their children given to the very perpetrators, the people who caused it in them. And that book got turned into a series at SBS called Look What You Made Me Do, and particularly as it pertains to domestic violence and murder of women in these situations. And yet still, the majority of people who I know who haven't seen their children are men. And, without naming names, I've tried to allude, some of the most significantly kind, loving, well-reputed men in Australian music. They're gentle personalities. They love their children. They've got great second relationships. Their first ones didn't work out, and the first ones, children of the first partnership or marriage haven't been seen for years. And it's just basically broken and crushed them. In fact, one case, a man had a stroke, and I'm on beta blockers due to the depression and the stress and a pension from the depression. I also had to deal with my own sister at Avalon trying to give my son away when I had a nervous breakdown about it all. My own family member tried to give my son away, and she was rich. She married into the Johnson Hardware fortune. And then 1 year after my son was with her and her 4 little boys, she tried to give him away to a stranger. And I didn't know. I was in the court the entire time, bashing on the door, trying to get him back. And he was in the court telling caseworkers, I just want to be restored to my mum. My loving and educational mother, she reads to me, she gives me piano lessons, she cuddles me, and I haven't seen him now for 5 years, and he's 14. And I haven't tucked my 11-year-old girl into bed since she was 8. And I even went into the court to make sure that it was all done. And then they've had the temerity. I've written urgent, application, contravention, urgent, and given the case number and read, my address, his address, and they've done everything. And they've gone down to Part D, details of the alleged contraventions. Well, here's date, time, and place. Statement of the alleged contravention. Well, there's not enough room for 3 years, right? So I've just read the father has completely withheld the daughter, Madeline Little, now aged 11, about to be 12, for 3 whole years. Thus, there are too many dates to list here. And so they have rejected me yet again for not sitting down in a 1-page pro forma at Part 6, Part D. See, because here's Part 7, the very next page. Details of the alleged contraventions continued. Only complete these paragraphs if you allege more than one contravention. You see, you can even go to the court and say, well, they didn't turn up that day. They just took off for the snow for 3 weeks and they didn't turn up once. So if they contravene it even once, you've got grounds for a contravention. But no, this is 3 whole fucking years. And so there's too many dates to write down. Right, and so I've just said, look, it's this period to this period, and they've gone, no, you didn't do it the right way, really. So I got straight on the phone to Mark Dreyfus, and said, who's the policy advisor for family? And they're, we can't tell you that. And I said, well, with respect, you're a public servant and I pay the tax, and that's exactly what this is for. And this is really important because this is about my children. And if you think there's anything more important than that, like blow hard, you can get another house or get another partner, but you can't get another child's life back. So, you might want to actually tell me who they are. No, we can't do that. Sorry, it's private. Well, no, it's not. You're a fucking public servant, asshole. How about that? No. Important. If you allege multiple instances of a contravention have occurred, you must complete a separate Part D for each alleged contravention. Well, a Part D is each alleged contravention for 3 fucking years. Every second weekend, all of half school holidays. State precisely what the respondent did or did not do which you allege amounts to a contravention, including the date, time and place if applicable. See, date, time and place. Here, all orders contravened completely on every date since November 2020. Mother has been allowed, in brackets, about 7 times for 3 hours for lunch, despite holding a working with children check and working full-time until February 22 as a professional nanny for barristers, lawyers and partners in KPMG. And then it says, affidavit of applicant. Please do not complete this part of the form until you are with a person who is legally able to witness your signature. Well, there they were, Nate Ross, and he said he was an authorised staff member of the court. And then they bounced me 10 days later. So we're now 10 days closer to Christmas. I've sent it to the family lawyers down the road who want $2,000 in a trust fund before they'll even read it. And that's not to guarantee that they've got the time to actually do it. So there goes the next entire 3 months again. I went down to the fucking court to make sure that none of this shit could happen. So look, I'm going to keep transferring these over to DWE TV Australia over at YouTube so that they stay there and don't fall off the 20-day or 30-day Facebook bounce system. They've then uploaded my PDF and most of it's missing. And I'd even made a spreadsheet of every single band he'd played in and left them at home cooking, where if they'd burnt themselves, there was no adult present to take them to a hospital and tend to their significant wounds, and including in a case where he was actually home and still let her fall asleep at 10 years of age next to a heater, which burnt her knee like a pork chop with 2 parallel lines on it, and the bruising was so deep and extensive it went down to her ankles, and so by logic she could have died in a house fire, and so could anyone else who was in the house. And here we have the proof again. We're down at page 16 and 18 here. And I've included the Australian Government Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet letter from Katie Gallagher and Rochelle White, her senior female women's policy advisor, who was really good, who've been really good to me. And now they're wanting me to write an essay on the importance of children's mental health. I've worked with special needs kids, primary schools kids, high school kids, prelingual kids, my own kids. 2 of them out of 3 are at the top of the state, literally academically. And they want me to tell them about the importance of mental health. Well, it starts with emotional health, doesn't it? please push this out to newsmakers, producers, journalists. I'm obviously pushing my own barrow over at the GoFundMe that I've got a link to on all of the pages here. But, the problem is, again, of course, it's Christmas. So everyone's gone off on holidays and everyone's already booked out, because this is exactly what happens at Christmas. Parents pull their other children away from their other parent, and there's like a bum rush is on. Katie Gallagher's office. Thank you for your email on the 13th of September 2023. It's already 2 months ago. I mean, just on and on and on. Your life and your children's lives get shilled away. And just to top it all off, these tickets to Professor Brian Cox, who really needs to curb down his enthusiasm for Mars. He's a bit Elon Musk like that, but everywhere else, he's an astrophysicist, so we'll forgive him. But he's coming on Saturday the 2nd of September at 2 in the afternoon to have the Sydney Symphony Orchestra play behind him while he explains the origins of the known universe, and huge projections from telescopes, deep space photos of the cradles of stars and of all of our origins, of our atoms, our billions of year old atoms that comprise us, that we are comprised of, all explained by the Angelina Jolie of men, to the great strains of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. And I've been asking this dipshit Ian Little for confirmation that Madeline Little, my 11-year-old, and my son, Augustus Farrow-Pryke, 14, can go. My eldest is now 18, so she can speak for herself, having been cruelled for 5 years by her father that broke me and her first. He's being sued in the Supreme Court. Deliberate and vexatious damages, the infliction of, is the tort. But you just can't believe that life could be so sad and hard. Here we are in a first world country where bombs aren't going off, and we've got medical equipment and hospitals galore and wealth, wealth and education, and yet you still don't have anything if you don't have anybody you love. And if they've been stolen from you, mate, you are just you're just the Walking Dead. And then they go, well, are you okay, David? No, we've all got to care about people's mental health. This is fucking up 10 people I know out of my Mark Zuckerberg cohort of 650, which is over 1.5%. So extrapolated out to all single families in Australia, there's at least 870,000 of those. So what's 1.5% of 870,000? And it would be even more than that, because I'm in an educated and loving cohort of people. And I don't say that like a snob. I say that like we are not using illicit drugs and calling our children names and not giving a shit about their education. There's a value on love here. And this, after 10 fucking days, 10 more fucking days in 3 years, this is the best that they've got. And then I get some little fucking jumped up smart ass in Canberra. Sorry, we can't give you the name of that person. We don't give names. I know. Why? Don't you have one? Well, you've got a fucking job title then. Can you just give me the job title? Oh, no, we don't do that either. What about policy advisors for family? Mark Dreyfus, Federal Attorney General. What about that? Who's that? Oh, I'm sorry, we can't. Well, I pay your tax. How about I pay your wage? Like you owe that to me. No, sorry, we can't do that. Yeah, really? I'll just get on LinkedIn and do a little bit of ferreting around, eh? So I did. Right. It's not just Aboriginal women having their children stolen from them. It is educated white ones too. It's not saying we're better, just different and the same. for all the wrong reasons. Please push this to documentary filmmakers, to journalists, to filmmakers, to producers of TV, specifically factual. And please go and think if you've got a little bit of coin to throw into my GoFundMe, because who I want is Esther Lawson and Sawin Abdelrahim. She's from the same uni as me, with the same degree, only she threw law into it and did her time out at South Sydney with a name like that. And, these people are barristers, but they don't take briefs directly from clients, so you've got to go through solicitors, and solicitors don't read your material unless you put $5,000 and $10,000 in a trust funded up front. So there you go, you're fucked again if you're poor. And in this situation, you invariably are, because your ability to function in this level of what they call technically major clinical depression is the diagnosis for me. There's nothing wrong with my mind. It's just my psychologist Sam Borenstein said you're living in perpetual grief and you're totally alone and there's nothing you can do about it, and everything you do doesn't work. Oh, man. I'm sorry, I better go. Look, you really need to start to ask people around you, if they've split up, it's like, how long since you've seen your kids? Is that all working? Because if I know 10 out of 650, that's 1.5%. And I told you, one guy said for 10 years he was suicidal as he went through the family court trying to get his child back, and his ex-wife, or whatever she was, would just dance the child around to another suburb, another house, and not even disclose where they were. And, he couldn't even find them, let alone compel child over to spend time with him. He's an artist, and like I said, there's several musicians, and then there's me, and a guy I went to school with at Avalon, loveliest guy on earth, and an IT worker who's been around the world, and an owner of a pub down in Deloraine who works with his family, and all these people. And, guy who's in Maitland, who's in just one of the nicest guys in Australian music, and there's all these... the editor for the Sydney Morning Herald is one of them, and then there's another one who did the back end of audio-visual for Gladys Berejiklian in lockdown. Remember her? All of these people haven't seen their children for years, and then just plunged them off a cliff that they can't wake up from. They're tormented from the loss of their little baby girls and boys. I just didn't never think it was possible to be so sad. But it is, and if you got no community and no job and no family, and they're all suing each other, and no partner and no future, and all of your children's lives have been gone, it's just... This is legal. And I'll say it again. Like I say every piece in every piece to camera here, I'll say it again. In Australia, you will go to the same criminal jail as a rapist and a murderer if you drive your own car after not paying a parking fine for 16 weeks and they cancel your licence. But if you do this, to a loving parent, nothing happens to you at all. No jail, no financial penalty, no acquisition of assets. There's no cops, there's no one coming in riding over to help. Yeah. I'll be that for today.